Greetings and salutations. This is Domingo Martinez. Today I'm going to go ahead and show you how to drive a motor with a potentiometer. So we can adjust the speed and rotation of the motor depending on our potentiometer. So the first thing we're going to do is take out a potentiometer. So this is going to allow us a little bit more control over our DC motor. So I'm going to click on the potentiometer, I'm going to rotate it, and since I already have a ground close by, I'm going to connect this one to ground. And your middle pin here is going to be connected to analog 0 or A0, and typically this would be connected to 5 volts, but since we already have the 5 volt pin being used, we're going to go ahead and, I'm going to go ahead and bring this to the breadboard and connect it to my 5 volts here. Alright, so now that my potentiometer is set up, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to utilize analog right. So if you look at our motors, they're connected to pin 6, 5, 4, and 3. So if you're going to use analog right, what you're going to have to do is use the pulse width modulation pins. So those are 3, 5, 6, 9, 10, and 11. So if you wanted to control pin 4, it wouldn't work because it's not a pulse width modulation. You don't see a tilde next to the 4. So we'd have to change that. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and control motor 6. So motor 6 is going to go in just one direction. It's either counterclockwise or clockwise. We'll figure that out first in a minute. But let's go ahead and set up our potentiometer in the code, or in the code editor. So our potentiometer is connected to analog 0. So we're going to create a variable. This is going to be an integer variable because it's going to be reading values, integer values. So we use the variable int for integer, and you can call this whatever you want. You can call it potentiometer, but that's a little long, so I'm just going to go ahead and call it pot, and I'm going to set it equal to A0, because if you take a look, you'll see that your potentiometer here is connected to A0, so I'm going to set that equal to A0. And I'm going to go ahead and create another variable, integer variable called value, or in this case val. Actually, I'm not going to set it equal to anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to first read the values coming from our potentiometer. So in order to read the values coming from our potentiometer, we have to utilize analog read, and we're reading values coming from our potentiometer. So notice these 5 pins here, A0 through A5, those are your analog pins. Pins 13 through 2 over here are digital pins. So whenever you want to read your values from analog pins, you would use analog read. And same would go for digital read for digital pins. So let me show you how to read data. One thing that we're going to utilize is the serial monitor. So if I were to type in serial.println, we can display what it is that we want to read. For instance, I want to read what values are coming out of our potentiometer. So I'm going to print val. And if I run this, I'll click on my serial monitor and you'll see a whole bunch of zeros, and hopefully if I move this potentiometer, you'll see those values change. So 246 is where it's currently at, and if I rotate my potentiometer, you'll see my values increase. So if I rotate my potentiometer all the way to its max value, it'd be 1023. So your potentiometer ranges from 0 to 1023. So we're going to utilize that data and manipulate it to move our DC motor here. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the simulation. And what I want to do is I want to go ahead and write the values to be used. So I'm going to go ahead and use pin 6, and it should move based on the values. Actually, that's not a good idea because the max values here are 1023. I cannot exceed, whenever you're using analog writes, the voltage here is what's being supplied to that specific pin. So you can never, on your Arduino, you can never exceed 255. So if I were to put here 1023, that would not be good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and map my values out. So I'm going to convert, it's kind of like a scale factor. I'm going to convert what I have from our current values, which is a min of 0, a max of 1023, and I'm going to convert that to a min of 0 but a max of 255. So now if I were to upload this, you'll see now that once my max was 1023, but now it's 255 on my potentiometer. So if I move it to the center dial here, it's now at 132 or 127, and you'll see the speed being adjusted as I move the potentiometer. So if I move it all the way to 0, your DC motor is no longer rotating. But as I increase the values of my potentiometer, so is the speed going to increase on my DC motor. So that's how you control DC motors with potentiometers, or likewise joysticks. Anything that can be connected to your analog pins, you can control. The DC motor with it.